Clever is an education technology company that is focused on making it really easy for students and teachers to use great technology in the classroom. Right now we do that in a couple ways. So one is we make it really easy for school districts to set up their accounts when they decide to use a new piece of technology like Khan Academy. We make it so that they can automatically set up those accounts and keep them up to date as kids kind of switch classes. And then beyond that, we make it so that students don't have to remember and teachers don't have to remember tons of usernames and passwords to get into all of their apps. So they can use Clever as their one-stop shop, single sign-on portal to get into all of those apps. And so today, Clever is powering technology for 1 in 4 schools in the country, and working with about 170 different edtech companies who the districts want to send their data to.
Wow. And so you're at Clever. You've been at many places, nonprofits, Stanford as well. So tell us a little bit about your journey from Stanford all the way to Clever.
Yeah. So so I did psychology and art at Stanford and graduated in '06. And after leaving, was sort of set on working somewhere that was doing something good in the world. And I landed at a human rights organization doing fundraising and event planning. And after a couple years there, kind of felt a little bit too far removed from the actual work of helping people, or specifically it was human rights at that organization. And so I was really looking to get a little bit closer to some of the groups that I was interested in working with. And so through some of the volunteer work I'd done in New York, kind of got interested in education and ended up doing a Master's of Education and a business degree back to back, initially with the intention of starting my own community-based youth arts organization. But along the way, kind of got sidetracked into other education organizations. So I spent some time working in India, working at Level Playing Field Institute, which you mentioned, and just found that I really enjoyed thinking about kind of how organizations that are trying to make a difference in the world, how they're structured, how they're run, kind of how they think about scaling and growing. And so after business school, I ended up working at Level Playing Field Institute, which is does STEM education programming for low-income and minority students, and actually runs a program at Stanford called SMASH. And my job there was to think about national scaling for SMASH. And at the kind of after doing that for a while, I became really interested in even bigger scale. And so that was kind of the first time I thought about edtech and all the cool stuff that's happening in that space. And pretty serendipitously learned about Clever right around the time that I was thinking about edtech, and was really drawn to one of the big things that really drew me to Clever was the problem that Clever is tackling is sort of one that is foundational to what's going on in edtech. So you could have like the coolest math application ever, but if we haven't solved the problem of how do you get kids logged in, how do you make it easy for schools to use the product, then there's still a lot of work to be done. And so I liked that Clever was kind of addressing something that has to happen in order for everything else to really take off.
And so, real quick, I forgot to say this at the top. For our audience, if you have any questions, feel free to comment on our Instagram account. That's Unplugged at Stanford, and find Jamila's photo there. Leave a comment of your question, and we'll plug the best questions in. So, Jamila, a question that I was having as you were kind of sharing the track is, we at the Career Development Center help students discover like ways to get jobs and then apply online, networking. How about for you? Let's talk like a real life example. How did you get your job at Clever, and maybe the place before that too?
Yeah, so at Clever, I applied online. Clever is, and now that I oversee recruiting, I'm proud to say that we actually do review and respond to every single person who applies. So, and luckily that was true when I applied at Clever as well. So I applied online, and I think for me, I tried to create a cover letter that would sort of stick out and really convey my personality, because Clever was such a small startup. It was only 5 people when I joined, and now we're over 50. So because it was such a small company, I thought I was willing to take that risk and really kind of show like who I am and what I'm about, because I figured if they didn't like it, then it wouldn't be the right fit for me anyway. So that my approach was just apply online, but try to write something that would stick out. My job before that, maybe a little less helpful. I actually did a program called Education Pioneers, which places grad students at education organizations at school districts for summer internships. And so I applied to that program. I got an internship at LPFI, and then I ended up getting a full-time offer at the end. So, but I guess to that point, if you have internships, always think about them as paths to offers. And if if you really can show that you could be a valuable member of the team, that's a great way, an easy way, I think, to get in the door.
Hey, Jamila, I'm so intrigued by the fact that you said that, when you applied to Clever, there were 5 people, small startup, and you basically were, hey, I'm going to show who I am and really connect that to my experience. So can you expand on that a little bit? Just how did you look at, okay, here's what this startup is doing, here's what my experiences are, and here's what I'm passionate about. Talk about the process of sort of figuring that out and then putting that together in a cover letter.
Yeah. So I kind of, because Clever was small, Clever was new, the job descriptions were pretty broad, right? It was like, we're 5 people, we need a bunch of things, and we need someone who can do a bunch of things. And so I kind of focused on that flexibility and that eagerness to take on lots of projects that might not be defined yet, and tried to think about, what is the day-to-day work going to be like at a small growing startup, and how are the things I've done even at bigger nonprofits or bigger organizations, like what are the parallels that I can really draw out. And some of that was, working in ambiguity, or sort of having to define the playbook, and talking about experiences that didn't come with a lot of instructions, and a lot of where I really had to figure it out on my own. In terms of, and then this is very much specifically what I did, but I ventured a little bit away from the traditional cover letter and actually kind of wrote a script of an interview as if Clever were interviewing me. And so I just kind of made some guesses, and it's definitely, now I see tons of cover letters, and I don't see a lot like that. So I definitely am not saying that everyone should do that, but that to me seemed like a way to show who I was, and not be so bound to kind of the formal offer letter, but just answer questions as a person and say, here's what I'm about.
Cool.
So you are the person, if someone wants to work at Clever, you're the person people really want to know what matters to you. So let's talk a little bit about what matters to you when you see an application, but also full-time internship opportunities. What's out there with Clever if students want to work with you guys? Yeah.
So in terms of what we want to see, one is just a real passion for the work we're doing. I think one of the things that makes Clever such a great place to work, and such a and I think and a product that's been adopted with so much enthusiasm, is that the team here really cares about education, really cares about making a difference in the classroom, in what school looks like today, and that's what drives a lot of the decisions and the thinking that we do here. So we want to see that in our applicants. Have they worked in education before? Have they volunteered? Have they tutored? And maybe it's not education, but is there something that indicates to us that they care that the work they do every day is making the world better, and ideally making the world better through education? So that's one. Kind of across all roles, we really look for that. I think otherwise it does end up kind of being really role specific. But one of the things that we do look for across all roles is sort of just, will someone be a great fit for the culture at Clever? And a couple things that I can say there. One is curiosity. One of the big aspects of our culture, we call it always a student, but basically being really curious, being excited to learn, and being excited to share what you've learned with others. So we gravitate towards applicants who show that they've been learning throughout their lives, their careers. They've been promoted through jobs, or maybe if they're still undergrads, they've taken on new challenges consistently, and we can see that. And another is, we call it don't trust the textbook, but sort of this idea of being willing to question things and let others question you. So we're looking for people who maybe they shook things up. Maybe they said, the club I was leading always did things this way, and under my leadership we tried this other experiment, it really worked. And places where we can see that they're independent thinkers that are eager to kind of figure out the best way to do things, and always looking to improve the work they're doing.
And specifically with technical roles right now here in April, and non-technical roles, what's available out there?
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so tons. And anyone who's listening should go to clever.com/jobs, because I probably won't remember all of them. But so on the technical side, full stack engineering roles, product management, data science, sort of product analytics, there are roles there. There will soon also be kind of a UX UI designer role, but we're not quite there. But you're getting the sneak peek heads up. On the non-technical side,
yeah, like that breaking news.
Exactly. So on the non-technical side, we have roles across the board. So account executives, those are our sales team. So those are people who are reaching out to edtech companies and basically getting them to sign up to use Clever. We have account managers who are, after those edtech companies have built a relationship with Clever, the account managers are kind of managing that relationship, making sure that Clever and the company together can really grow Clever's use in their districts and basically make it easier for those companies to get the district data that they need. And let's see, we also have district-facing roles. So those are folks who are reaching out to the biggest districts in the country and helping them think about how they want to use apps and how to get set up properly. And similarly, on the support side, we have a school experience team that is focused on helping existing schools who are using Clever, helping them straighten things out if things go wrong. So there are some roles open on that team as well.
Cool. And another thing that's coming up for me is I bet there's folks in your audience that are torn between, hey, should I go work at a nonprofit for status school? Should I go work at a startup? I'm sure that's out there. How would you advise on that?
Yeah, I think that there's value in either path for sure. I had only ever worked at nonprofits prior to Clever, so that's very much kind of what I did. I think in a lot of ways, you kind of learn some of the same things. So if it's a small enough startup or if it's a kind of maybe not the most well-funded nonprofit, you learn a lot about sort of being scrappy, being resourceful, to use that term again, but to sort of define your own playbook. I think there are a lot of similar skill sets there. I think, honestly, I think it depends on what you want to learn and what you're passionate about. There aren't as many startups doing serving all of the needs that people might be passionate about. And so for me, what I'm working on and what the organization is trying to accomplish has always been the biggest motivator about where I want to work. And so because of that, nonprofit is what made sense to me, because that for me. But I think if you're thinking about a startup, I think one of the things to think about, and I would say probably true of any organization, is really thinking about the culture and what you're hoping to find. And if it's really small, talking to the founders and asking them how they think about culture, and maybe there isn't a lot in place because it's new and small, but is it something that they are excited to have a conversation about, or is it something that is sort of like, oh, we'll get to that later? And so just thinking about the approach that you are comfortable with and then signing up accordingly.
Hey, Jamila, so I just took a peek at the website and the job board, and I see you guys are also hiring for internships. So like you have an engineering intern hiring for. So could you talk a little bit about the internship experience at Clever?
Yeah. So the formal program we have is for engineering internships, and those are always for rising seniors. And we have about 4 a year right now. I think the program will certainly grow, but they typically are here in the summer. Every intern has a buddy or like a mentor who's someone who's on the team, and they take on pretty meaty projects. So one of our interns, Clever has a product that basically automatically sets up Google accounts for entire school districts, so like thousands and thousands of their accounts. And one of our interns built that in his summer. And so we definitely don't we give people really meaty projects that give them the opportunity to work on something significant and really understand kind of how it fits into the bigger landscape. But so from they have a mentor to kind of guide them and help them and get unstuck when they have questions. We do, this isn't so much specific to interns, but we do lots of team events and things like that throughout the year, throughout the summer, so the interns definitely get to participate in that. And then we really view it as a sort of path to a full-time offer. So, ideally at the end of the internship, we are able to have someone join the team full-time after they go finish their last year of school.
Awesome.
And you talked a little bit about kind of events that you all do, and startups. From what I hear, they tend to be fun. So what kind of fun stuff are you all doing?
So we do lots of fun stuff. So the sort of the stuff that's a given is we have happy hour every week, which is in our office, and we end up playing board games and ping pong and all kinds of things and dance parties. But in addition to that, every month we have an event. And those have really ranged from, we've done improv, we've done a guacamole cooking contest, we've done hiking and kayaking. What did we most recently? We did kind of a sunset boat cruise. I think one of our next ones is going to be a graffiti tour where we get to learn about some of the graffiti in San Francisco and then kind of learn some hands-on graffiti tactics, which should be pretty fun.
Cool. And another kind of more like career advice question that we'd like to get your take on for students. So what advice do you have for Stanford students focused on making sure they leave school with skills, experience that will make them pretty much like invaluable to an employer upon graduation?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I don't think I personally did that while I was at Stanford, but I think I've managed to do it along the way. So I would say, I think that take classes outside your discipline that are sort of always useful for working. So things like, for me, one was spreadsheet modeling. So, see if there are classes at the business school or classes that are kind of at those intersections that are just universally useful. I think if you're interested in the business side of things, having some background in like economics is useful, just to sort of think about competition and supply and demand and stuff like that. I also think that through Stanford there are plenty of opportunities to just get hands-on experience doing real things. So whether that's volunteering, whether that's doing, maybe there's like a consulting club where you consult to local nonprofits or school districts. I'm not so sure about what there is now, but I'm sure there are tons of things. And so I think finding opportunities that might be outside of class that really let you try to apply what you've learned in a real setting. One, it just gives you practice doing that. It also gives you a lot of stuff to talk about when you're being interviewed, because you don't have to just say, well, I did this for a school project. You can actually say, when I did this at this organization, it just gives a little bit more weight to it. But yeah, I also think, like I said, I didn't really focus on making sure I was prepared for careers while I was picking classes at Stanford, and I think there's a certain value to that too. I really took classes that I was passionate about and interested in, and that means that I have interesting things to talk about when I interact with people. And so, I think kind of keeping a balance between what just gets you really excited, and then what are sort of baseline skills that will always be useful. It's like trying to strike a balance is what I would say to do.
For sure. Wahab, do you have any other questions coming from the startup background you do?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think that one of the things I would love to hear about, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here, Jamila.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear that story that you feel you can tell us that kind of captures that culture of Clever, or maybe just that success story about like how what you guys are doing is really impacting lives. Because I know you're in was it 1 in 4 schools now that you're powering?
Yep.
That's awesome stuff. So can you just share with us like one of those stories where it's just kind of like, this is why I'm working at Clever?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I will definitely do that. I'm also going to add one more thing to the last question, which is I would say take a CS class, even if you're not, at Stanford. Maybe it's just CS 105, maybe it's 106A, but if you're interested at all in working in tech, even if there's no way you'll ever be an engineer, it's just really helpful to understand that mindset. And while I'm adding that, I would also take a design school class because I think the design thinking approach to things is just really useful no matter what you're doing.
Right.
But to go back to Wahab's question, I can think of a couple on the sort of impact side. One of the things that we, like I said, we want to make it really easy to bring great technology to the classroom, and we have found some really great partnerships in the districts that we've worked with. I was going to actually just give you a data point, but we commissioned a survey to find out like how big of a problem is this, and we learned that teachers said they spend 25% of their class time when they want to use technology. They spend 25% of class time getting kids logged in or doing technical troubleshooting. And so if you think about, a teacher has an hour for science class a day, if a quarter of that is spent just trying to get kids set up, that's really sad. And there's so much to learn. And so we, in terms of impact, I think one of the things that I think about is Clever is now, powering technology for 15 million students. And if that means that we're saving 15 minutes of class time, every class time that's using technology, that's huge. So that's, I think, one that's really exciting. Another one in terms of impact is we've, Oakland Unified School District, so, pretty close by, is one of our, a district that sort of we're very close to and kind of work with when we think about rolling out new products and features. And so we've kind of built a great relationship with them and other districts who have really started to look to Clever to see if apps are already working with Clever as they think about what apps they want to roll out. So there are a few other big districts who have said, we're only going to consider an app if it works with Clever because it's so much easier for them to roll it out if it does. Is that kind of, did you want a more like what it's like working here question or answer?
No. I mean, I think that a lot of people, especially our Stanford students, really resonate with the impact. And I mean, that's a ton of time, and that just leads to more productivity and more learning. And so being an education startup, like, I can definitely see sort of how that's definitely sort of impacting the students every day, right? They spend more time essentially using the technology for what the purpose is to learn. And that's because it's Clever. And so that's definitely inspiring. So that's great stuff.
All right. So, Jamila, is there anything else? I think we're kind of closing it out here. Anything else you'd like our audience to know about Clever?
I think it's just if there are jobs that you think you'd be a great fit for, we'd love to have you apply. So clever.com/jobs is the best place to do that. And we are always posting new positions. So if things are interesting, please submit.
For sure. And so check them out, clever.com. You've got a Stanford alumna sitting there as the head of business operations, so you have a fan over there already. And just as a plug for tomorrow, we have Unplugged at Stanford with a current student, a senior who's on Forbes 30 Under 30 and works at SunPower as well. Check him out tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Otherwise, we'll thank you, Jamila, very much for coming on. And we'll see you all next time.